Tales from the Tap. My name is Frankie, and this is my co-host,
Stan the Man.
and we are excited to talk to you about Magic post ban and restricted. Stan, we were right.
I mean, they didn't unban Ponder. But yeah, like we got it.
yes, we did get it.
To be fair, I did say they were going to ban Bowmasters. It felt correct to ban Bowmasters, but I'm glad they didn't. Now that we're at where we're at and we have like that hindsight, the Beanstalk ban, that makes so much sense.
It does.
I didn't think they would, but I'm glad that they committed to it.
And what's funny about that, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but I was thinking about it as we were coming over here. I was like, oh, you know, when people talk about like, oh, these cards are dying for the sins of the elementals.
Sure.
That's kind of what Beans feels like. It's like, I think Beans is like a reasonable Magic card, but when you have like things like Leyline Binding and then also the elementals, it's like, oh man, free spell, draw a card, also get value. Seems kind of crazy, but that's also the way that I felt about Yorion. Like Yorion also died for the sins of the elementals because you'd be like, well, just shove them all in the deck.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Beanstalk is the cross and Fury is Jesus. Confirmed.
Jeez. And
but yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't think I necessarily 100% agree. Like Yorion just was like, get him out of here. Companions in general, get him out of here. But yeah, I feel you on like okay, they banned Bridge from Below instead of Hogak. What the heck? They banned this instead of that. But you know, they did axe the best elemental. I think we can agree now that Fury was the best one. It was the most restrictive, the most played in general. So it is what it is.
yeah, and on top of that, what you're saying about Bowmasters, like, right, we did kind of predict like, oh, Bowmasters will be banned too. But my fear was that if they did, we'd have like no checks and balances for card draw, specifically the One Ring. And so,
Yeah.
and you even mentioned today in like one of our group chats about how Coffers would probably not be as good of a deck, and like them keeping Bowmasters keeps Coffers relevant. And so there are a few decks that I'm like, oh, like even the blue-black control, like the Dimir control. I'm like, oh man, without Bowmasters, does that deck still have legs? Does Coffers still have legs?
Honestly, even like Death Shadow, Shadow is one of my favorite decks. It's so good. It's really fun to play, and it's like riding the line of like whether or not you're gonna die or whether or not you're gonna crush somebody. It used to be one of the most broken things you could do, and I really respect the deck. It's just in shambles. It's just not represented. Ponder would have been a cool card to help them out, you know, but if they would have banned Bowmasters, like Death Shadow, I think would be actual non-existent. Just don't play the deck.
Well, maybe because you've been praying to the smuggler copter gods to get this card back, it's now time to, you know, pay your licks to the Ponder gods.
Yeah, I think we're gonna definitely start seeing some talks of unbans in Modern, but for sure, this is a big shakeup, and they're gonna let it cook. When's the next RCQ season for Modern? Like Q3 2024, I want to say.
Yeah,
It's gonna
so
be a while.
the next one is Standard and then
I believe it's
Pioneer, but
Yeah.
the RC is Standard Modern. So when the next regional championship comes around after Standard, it will be Modern again. So
Right.
it's not going to be like too long.
Okay, so we have time to cook though, but like by June we'll have to have like some kind of solidified format. With that being said, we'll see what it looks like, and then whether or not the format is in a position where bans and unbans make sense. For now though, I think we should mention our predictions. Where do they come from? Because if you follow the podcast, we didn't actually talk about unbans because we only record every 2 weeks currently. With that being said, shout out to MTG Chicago and our buddy Sal, who runs that YouTube channel. He asked us to do a video for him for those who haven't seen it. And if you're one of the new viewers that's here now because you saw us on MTG Chicago, welcome. We appreciate you being here. We were on Sal's channel because he asked us to talk about the unban predictions and the really exciting announcement that was basically going to happen where we were for sure going to see some bans and actually an unban. So like Frank said, we pretty much called it exactly. Geological Praiser, Karn ban. I mentioned Smuggler's Copter being unbanned as like a potential this makes sense kind of situation, but I could see them not doing it because they want to let the format cook. They decided not. We're gonna we're gonna give you guys back the copter, and honestly, we're really excited about that. One, to be right is kind of nice. Feels a little bit vindicating, but also
Right.
two, kind of makes sense. Smuggler's Copter, really good card, but also just playable reasonable. I think it's a good addition to the format now because it's not individually too powerful, but it does add to certain deck archetypes that could maybe need some help right now.
Yeah, and I talked about, like, right, we just had the release of Subterranean Schooner, which is not as good of a card as Smuggler's Copter. It's not flying. It isn't on attacks and blocks, whereas Smuggler's Copter is on attacks and blocks. But Schooner is attack, the creature that crewed it explores.
Right.
And so you're still getting card advantage.
Yeah.
And it's a 3/4 as opposed to Smuggler's Copters being a 3/3.
Right.
So
I mean, it was comparable in power level for sure.
yeah.
And Explorer is pretty close to Looting in terms of power level. Like, they're not far off.
Right.
So yeah, it was a pretty reasonable comparison. I think Frank made a good point on that one. But with that being said, we'll jump into more of the talks as we get down to that part of the podcast with the ban talks, because we are going to get really into it. And for now, we're just going to jump into some housekeeping really quick just to keep the lights on.
Actually, before the housekeeping, we did want to talk about MTG Chicago is coming, like the Pro Tour here.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
Not the channel.
Not the channel.
Actual MagicCon. Yeah, MagicCon is going to be in Chicago in February, and the tournament's going to be the 75K tournament that was limited in Vegas is going to be standard. So that's going to be really exciting. And Frank and I are both going to commit to going.
Yeah. So already bought my ticket today. My wallet's hurting, but I am very excited to play competitive Magic at a high level, represent the podcast, see other content creators. Like, I know my favorite, like, limited podcasters are going to be there playing in Murder of Karlov Manor.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm so amped. And like, right, come on, you and me getting a photo with Mangucci. I know how much you love Mangucci.
If I get to meet Mangucci, I'll be really happy. I'm always tweeting at Andrea on X or whatever, and he's always hearting my reacts. I'm like, yes. Every time I get a heart from Mangucci, I'm always like, but with that being said, I did have some promises I wanted to make you guys. So we want to hype you guys up for some future of our content. So I hate making promises, but I made a list of some that I'm going to commit to. Frank has already been streaming on our Twitch, and we will try to do some multi-streaming in the future. But for now, Twitch has been our main focus. I have been saying I was going to stream, and I just haven't found the time. I've also been really sick. So now that I'm healthy again, and now that I have the time, I promise that I'm going to start streaming. I'm going to commit to at least once a week, assuming there's no emergencies or anything. And I promise that the first one, once I figure out the logistics, will be within the next 10 days. So for you guys that have been waiting for that, I'm going to get it. I'm going to just get it done. And it might be some late night streams for our people in Japan. Shout outs to you guys. I'm going to see if I can get some early day streams, but most of the time it's going to be Frank doing the early ones and I'll be doing the late ones. And then we'll have those VODs up for you guys on the YouTube channel. And then the second promise I was going to make is that as a store owner, I do have access to products at a pretty reasonable price that a lot of people don't have access to. And we've been meaning to, but haven't gotten to do some giveaways for you guys. So Frank and I are going to invest some of our own money, get some products for you guys, and do some cool giveaways. So if you guys have any ideas of stuff that you might like to see us give away, whether it's collector packs or just straight up set boxes or play boxes going forward with Karlov Manor, etc., let us know what you guys are into, and then we'll definitely keep the feedback in mind as we decide what we want to do, because we don't want to just like give away like, oh, random commander deck that maybe it's like nobody wants it or whatever. Or maybe it's like a pick 3, like, oh, you won the raffle, you can pick one of these 3 prizes, etc. We'll try to keep the value around the same. But with that being said, that's another promise I wanted to make you guys. The third promise is, like Frank mentioned, we are going to be committing to MagicCon. I know in the Discord I said I wasn't likely going to be able to go, but shout out to Todd who said that we're going to make it happen. And whether we have to close the store on that Saturday or he covers the shop for me, I will be going to MagicCon and competing with you guys, and we'll be doing either Team Tales from the Tap or Team Boarhat. Whatever we got to do, we'll get it done with some playmats and whatnot.
Too blessed to be stressed. Thank you, Todd Father.
And the fourth promise is, I've been meaning to, but every Sunday something comes up and it's my only day off. I haven't gotten a haircut in like months, and my hair looks so terrible. I think it looked really, really bad on the recording we did for MTG Chicago. So thank you guys for putting up with my hair lately. I promise I'm going to get a haircut. It's going to happen. I feel so bad that it just looks so bad for so long.
Does that mean that the next stream title is going to be a new haircut? Who dis?
Exactly. But with that being said, let's finish up this housekeeping. How do you guys reach us? If you want to reach us, you can reach us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I like X for typing because it's faster, but Twitter just kind of rolls off the tongue. And we try to stay active on there as much as we can, especially if you're tweeting at us. We'll definitely react to your content, your memes. I love memes on Twitter. That's like the best thing for Twitter. Otherwise, I'm just looking for deck lists, whatever people are posting, like Doomwake, Aspiring Spike, and one of my favorites is Dak Faden. He's always posting some cooks. That guy is like Thanksgiving all year. So if you're looking on Twitter, there's always some cool deck lists I'll be retweeting or posting our own W's, whether we trophied a limited or whatever, or we're trying a new deck list on stream. We'll definitely be posting on Twitter.
Yeah, and if you're not in our Discord already, because that's where I post all of my trophies for specifically limited events.
Yeah.
But Twitter is also a place where I will post like, oh, hey, I got a trophy. This is my deck list. And then if you're like, oh, well, why did you choose these cards? Or what's good in this limited format? I've been playing a lot of it. I even got an RCQ, not this weekend, but the following weekend for Sealed. Going to try and get in there with the last chance. So that's a good place for you to come and reach us. But with our Discord in mind, it's starting to pop off. Like we're all like starting to talk in there every day about different decks, different cards, getting ready for this standard event coming in February. Like it is a great time to be a part of all of the Magic talk if you're into playing Magic. Yeah,
big shout out to the people that stay active in the Discord. We really appreciate you guys. It's been so much fun to just talk about Magic nonstop. And also Frank, I haven't really been playing as much limited because I was just ill the past couple of weeks. But Frank has been just crushing Caverns of Ixalan. I think he has like a 25-30% shot at like 5+ wins right now. And that's pretty hard considering this format's actually difficult. I've been seeing a lot of people struggling with this format online. So if you yourself are finding the struggles, just hit up Frank. He will tell you what he's doing. He's even helped me. I'm like, hey, get on Discord right now. I'm about to waste 1,500 gems. If you're not helping me with this draft, I want to pick good cards. Because I'll draft by myself. I'm like, my deck is cooking, and I'll get like 2 wins, and I'm like, oh man, I was not cooking. So
cooking something.
Yeah, exactly. I was cooking like a mistake. But Frank has been just crushing. It's actually been really fun to watch him play this format specifically as somebody who I consider better than me at limited. He's been really crushing it.
Siri, please save clip.
Yeah. Record, snap, whatever. Yeah. Todd is gonna frame this one. With that being said, the best place you can reach us for content right now would be YouTube. We've been posting all the podcasts to YouTube now. We're still on Spotify and all the other podcasting platforms, but because we are now full video and it's more or less kind of working to a functional degree that we are proud of, YouTube is going to be the best way to see all the editing, all the cards that Todd's editing into the video, etc. And then you can read stuff as well, so you don't have to try to memorize every card in the format while you're trying to listen to the podcast and relax. And for those that are just listening while you're driving or you're at work, you'll still have the audio, no problem. We'll still try to remember to name off cards for you guys as well.
And put in the comments of this YouTube video if, Stan mentioned, hey, we're doing a giveaway. What do you want? Put it there.
Yeah, let us know.
That'll be a great way.
And it's free to subscribe. We'd really appreciate it if you can get us a subscription. Really, really would be grateful. Same in the same vein, if you guys want to follow us on Twitch, it's also free. We'd greatly appreciate that as well because we're going to start streaming there as well. And then the best way you can support our content, if you like us, is Patreon. We have a ton of patrons already. I think we're almost double digits, and we really, really are grateful to the people who have been supporting us from the beginning. You guys are the best. We definitely think of you guys first when we try to improve our content and try to keep the quality up. Every time I'm thinking about buying a new mic or a new camera or whatever, you guys are the first people in my head that I'm like, I got to make sure the content stays on point for these guys. So thank you so much for that. And then whoever joins in the future, we also appreciate you guys as well.
Yeah. And we're doing more and more and more with that. We had purchased logos and different things for our merch, which we're repping now. In addition, we had one of our patrons go, hey, do you guys have a playmat? No? Well, I'd really buy a playmat. So we're in the works of getting that together now too. Just everything that we get, we're just trying to put back into you guys because not only do we love Magic, but we love making content that people not only find enjoyable, but I'm not kidding. Every time Trent comes here and it's, limited, pre-release or draft, and he goes, I'm playing so much better now because of what you said. And I'm like,
yeah, the people that reach out and tell us in person, like, oh, dude, I crushed this league, or I was having so much fun online with your list or whatever. I'm like, yes, bro, what it's all about.
yeah.
It really does feel really rewarding. So like we said, we really appreciate you guys. And for the viewers that are just here with us, just watching, we also greatly appreciate you guys. Just the fact that you're watching here, it's really awesome. The last way to reach us, if you can't reach us through any of these other means, you can always email us anything important you guys need at talesfromthetap@gmail.com. With that being said, we have a lot to talk about, so we're just going to have to jump into it.
Dive in.
So we kind of edged you guys on bans, but there's something else we have to talk about first. Unfortunately, or fortunately for the Arena enjoyers, there is a new format coming to Arena. I personally am pretty excited about it. This new format is called Timeless. So what is Timeless? Timeless is a 60-card constructed, non-rotating format. Not necessarily eternal, because the only eternal formats are Commander, Legacy, and Vintage, as they encompass all sets. This format is going to be everything that's ever been on Arena, and it's going to start off as a restricted only format. So they are kind of going with the power level of Legacy and Vintage in mind, and the restricted list of Vintage. Although I believe they did say cards can be banned. So important things to note: they are going to be using the OG versions of paper cards. So any card that was adjusted on Arena or Alchemy because of nerfs or whatever, if it was a paper card first, like Demonic Tutor, etc., those cards will be their original versions for Timeless. If it is a digital card, it will be the tuned version. So any digital Alchemy only, Arena only cards will be whatever they decided was the updated version. So with that in mind, it's going to be a pretty powerful format regardless. This format, it's going to be the first time we're ever seeing a restricted format besides Vintage, which is really cool for the people that like high power formats like us. We are Magic enjoyers here. The first restricted list is going to be based off of the historic no ban lists event they've been having online. Apparently they were really, really popular. I personally had a great time playing them myself, and they got their data for what they wanted to restrict starting off with that those events. So with that being said, the initial restricted list is going to be Channel, which is busted. I mean, that's where Channel Fireball gets its name, for those that don't know, all the Zoomers in the community. Channel is a double green sorcery that says you can pay a life for a generic mana until end of turn. So you can basically just cast whatever you want. I mean, on Vintage Cube, the amount of times I get Channel just to like Emrakul, and for 15 life, okay, turn 1 Emrakul, Time Walk. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of power level you're getting with Channel. Demonic Tutor is the second card. Everybody knows that card, especially if you play Commander. 2 mana, black and 1 sorcery. Search your deck for any card. Probably just like the most straight up powerful tutor in the game. It just puts the card straight into your hand. Super efficient. Banned in Legacy. Crazy card. The last card, kind of a new card, so it's really cool. Very cute, but a really, really powerful card nonetheless. Banned in Modern. Tybalt's Trickery. So that one is also going to be restricted. So we'll see if anybody plays that as like a one of in their decks to do some spicy stuff. But I feel like it's going to be hard to combo with that with only one in your deck. I guess we'll see. With that being said, they chose those cards based off of their performance in the no bans historic events, and apparently it was extremely popular. So we're going to see this format pretty soon. It's going to be on Arena, I believe, December 12th with the launch of Khans of Tarkir, or Khans of Tarkir Remastered, whatever they're calling it. With that being said, the midweek Magic for that event is going to be the 12th to the 14th. So it's going to be the new format. And then the metagame challenge, which is one of those like big, you got to win 7 before you lose 2 to qualify for day 2 events in February, 2nd to the 4th weekend. You're going to be playing Timeless for the metagame challenge, which is pretty hype. It gives people about 3 months to prep, maybe like 2.5 months to prep for what this format's going to look like and see what decks are going to be hot. And then we'll find out what cards get banned right away. With that being said, Khans of Tarkir is going to be giving us fetch lands online. So why does this matter? It's kind of another cool way to enjoy the game. And like we talked about before, Frank and I are Magic enjoyers. We enjoy Magic here.
Yeah, and I just love that Magic is doing more and more to make different formats, make different events, because between RCQs
Relevant
and
ones.
like arena opens, and I'm just getting more and more into being like, I want to start playing in some of these other events, even
Yeah.
like if I can't. Oh man, I can't make it there that day, but I can like sit on my phone. I think I did one when you and I went to that League of Legends event at the United Center.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm trying to qualify in the Arena Open. I'm playing right now. So
I
like,
remember I
we're
was watching, and then while they're doing Champ Select or whatever, Frank's over here like, I'm playing limited, bro. I'm like, how are you getting signal in here?
Right. And so yeah, as Magic enjoyers, them creating not only something that references back to paper is great, but on top of it is just creating more events for people to play in and just appealing to a wider audience.
Yeah,
can't complain.
We definitely say we're a paper mostly podcast. We focus entirely on paper for the most part. We do care about arena and those formats, but like what we're trying to do is get you guys ready for RCQs, RCs, NRG events, Star City games if they ever come to the Midwest again. That kind of stuff is what we kind of mainly focus on. But there are a lot of people at home that can only play online because they either got kids, family, work, etc. Like it's kind of hard to get to these events sometimes, especially if you have to travel. Or let's say you're one of our guys in Japan, you can't just come out to like MagicCon if you're stuck in Japan, so you can only really play online. And it's cool that they're supporting more online content that's like really actually fun. Because I remember before, Historic was like my favorite format before they ruined it with Alchemy, but this looks like it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more my speed, especially with fetch lands.
And I keep it in the realm of I like using these online tools to help me play in-person Magic.
Yeah,
like
100%.
you better believe that I'm going to be playing a ton of Best of One Standard to get ready for Standard in February. So that's all. It's all still paper in the sense of it's tools to help us come back to these things.
Any format you play will always improve your fundamentals. So it's good to play as many different formats as you feasibly can, because if you only play Modern or if you only play Standard or anything, it's always going to be limiting in the knowledge that you can acquire. The more formats, the more expansion on the card database you have in your head going, the better you'll end up being at the game overall. And that's just a testament to whether or not you have the time and money to commit to it, or the desire to, or if you're happy with where you're at, etc. We're just here to provide you guys with the answers whenever you ask. This format is catered to have a lot of powerful cards in it, which is awesome because on Arena, there's a lot of cards that are pretty much useless. Like you get this card in like Strixhaven, Mystical Archives, or Enchanted Tales, whatever. You get the card, it's worthless. If you didn't draft it, it's just in your collection. Historic Brawl is kind of a meme. They don't really support it. There's no way to play 4-player Historic Brawl, so it's not really Commander, which that would be awesome, by the way, if they could support that. I would love 4-player Historic Brawl. But anyways, this is kind of a cool way to get more of your collection to be actually useful on Arena, which I think is really cool, because before you couldn't really play any of those banned cards besides testing with your friends for fun. What's going to happen with Historic? So for the people that already enjoy Historic, don't worry, it's not going anywhere. WotC kind of felt Historic was in a really healthy spot, so they want to keep it that way. They're really happy with the way the format looks. Honestly, if you look at the metagame, it really does look good. I don't personally play it that much, but the few times I have played it for whatever midweek Magic was going on, or I needed to earn some cosmetics, it's solid. It's not a bad gameplay. You get used to the alchemy cards for those that don't like them. I like some of them. I think some of them are a little bit too much, but it is what it is at this point. We are enjoyers. Don't hate on the cards. Let them cook. With that being said, they are pre-banning the fetch lands that are coming in cons of Tarkir for Historic. So that's kind of where they want to keep the power level. So it's kind of like Historic is going to be Pioneer power level, and then Timeless is going to be closer to Legacy and Vintage. So we'll see how that goes. If it ends up being closer to Vintage power level because it's restricted, that would be crazy. But I believe they said they will start banning certain cards that are still too good, even as one-ofs. With that being said, that's pretty much all we have on that announcement specifically. But if you guys want to see more content from Timeless in the future, let us know. I'll definitely try to get it streamed up for you guys. I personally like high power formats, so I'm going to dabble in it a little bit. But for the most part, I'm going to be focusing on Standard, getting ready for the next 2.5 months to try to win a tournament for you guys.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to get all of those Deshaunus Tidebinders, aren't I? I can't escape it. And they're probably shooting up in price.
Deshaunus Tidebinder is definitely a card we'll have to talk about.
I'm crying over here. I've been playing the blue-white like mid-range list. And I'm not kidding. I feel like a king. I've been winning so many games with that.
I meant specifically for modern, so I'm glad you already got them.
Yeah, well, in standard. I don't have them like in person. I just mean like on arena. That's the deck I'm playing on arena.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. When they're like, I played against an opponent today that was playing ramp and they went Atraxa. And I was like, oop, counter that ability. You got a 7/7
Oh my gosh.
with
It's
no
crazy.
text.
Yep. 7/7
so sorry.
nothing.
And then they were like, oh,
So
well, I'm
cool.
going to leyline binding the Tashana's Tideminder you have so that I can get my Atraxa to have lifelink so I don't die. Oop, the other Tashana's Tideminder. Yes,
I really like it. Even in limited, I've had some drafts where I get to Tashana's Tidebinder. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna play this. I'm playing blue already. It's like a flash 3 power creature. They'll play like 6-mana Dinosaur Discover. I'm like, no, and it doesn't have trample. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's so good. But in modern, Tashana's Tidebinder, it's making waves, and honestly, I think it gets better with the way the bans worked out because it was getting played the most in Rhinos, and Rhinos didn't lose anything. They were like already kind of not even playing Fury.
Sure.
So it is pretty cool. With that being said, let's tell you guys what the bans were. Maybe not everybody saw the announcement, so we're just gonna get it over with really quick, just to let you guys know.
Boom, boom, boom.
In our prediction video, for those that saw, we were pretty much spot on. I said Orcish Bowmaster Fury ban. It ended up being Fury Beanstalk, which makes more sense. I did say though it could be up to Fury Grief, Solitude, Beans, One Ring. So it's pretty nice that they only banned 2 cards.
And when we did mention MTG Chicago and this video, and I just said Chicago the same way that you did, which is
Chicago.
like, yeah, jeez, you're hurting me.
Sorry, man, I'm Mexican.
Yeah, I can't do that. I'm gonna get canceled. Anyway, so wow, that took me right out. I'm so sorry.
Breathe.
That video, we're gonna link it at the like in the description. So if you didn't see our update, you can go and check it out in the description of this video.
And check out his channel, man. Sal's channel is so cool. It's a really awesome community channel. It really is. It's gameplay from all the stores in the area. He's bringing me a bunch of cameras this week to Boarhat so I can get some feature match setups for you guys to get even more content out, and I just want to get some gameplay out of like our local community. So if you want to come get your matches on YouTube, come play. Like I will get you guys in there, especially if you're playing something cool. But
Bans. Pioneer, we banned Karn the Great Creator, we banned Geological Appraiser, and unbanned Smuggler's Copter. You called it.
Yeah, that one we
All
nailed.
you.
We were like, we're banning this, we're banning this. I was kind of iffy on whether they would ban Karn, only because green has been kind of on the downhill, but Frank was like, nah, just get rid of it. And honestly, more or less, I agree. Nothing was lost with the Karn ban. Nothing was lost with the Geological Appraiser ban. And Smuggler's Copter, our boy, is back. I'm really glad I called that one because for the longest time, I'm like, why is this guy banned? He doesn't, like, he's not ban worthy, in my opinion. And so I'm glad that they agreed, and we get to play with this card going forward.
Yeah, I think the big thing, right? Geological Appraiser is like an obvious one. It's not something that we can like really talk about much because it was turn 3, very consistent kill combo in Pioneer. Like even Lotus Field and, you know, decks like Boros Convoke were not as explosive
all like turn
as
4
this
kills.
deck.
I
And
think Lotus Field turn 4 is at the fastest.
right. And on top of it, like if you think about it, someone mentioned like, oh, this is one of the fastest cards that's ever been banned, like since its release, because it's been quick. I mean, what LCI came out on like November 11th or something like that. It was like the week. I think it was the weekend of my birthday.
That's how it should be. Honestly, they should
So-
really be just smart and concise with their decisions.
Yeah, and so it's not much to talk about there. It was creating like modern level speed in Pioneer.
It was a turn 3 consistent combo with a 1-card finish. Like they only needed Geological Appraiser to resolve and survive a trigger. You'd kill it in response. So it's like a kill spell check or a hate spell check, and the way to hate it out was really inconsistent.
Right.
So-
You'd have to have the like kill it on 2 so they couldn't Eldritch Evolution it to get anything else. And so
Right.
it'd be like, all right, I can't play anything because I have to hold up a removal spell.
Yeah, it's so
Which
oppressive.
felt more oppressive than Greasefang, and Greasefang is fast.
Yeah. It's because like those cards like Greasefang, they need another card. They like combo card with card. 2-card, 3-card combos are really kind of reasonable when you compare them to like, oh, if I just resolve this one spell, you lose. Like that's way too much, especially for Pioneer. Like that was just
Yeah.
so. Like we said, nothing was lost. And Karn, even though green was on the downtrend, you could still play mono green devotion. It honestly probably looks a lot more fun without Karn, playing something like Ulvenwald Oddity as a finisher instead. But Karn package, goodbye. We'll see you later. Maybe we'll see some crazy artifacts in the future.
Yeah, and on top of that, like I want this to like be mentioned because I think that there are some people that are going to be out there and say, "Hey, well, mono green was on the downswing." But can we take that data into consideration, knowing that like the geological appraiser format has been here for a full month? So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it went down because there was another deck that was doing a combo better.
There was a deck that was
Like,
just way crazier, and also Grixis Phoenix is a thing now, and that deck we'll get into is really exciting and was also crushing it.
yeah, I'm on like 4 leagues in a row with that deck, and it did give me a little bit of like, oh man, sequencing, like how I'm doing these cantrips and what lands I'm playing is like way more than I've been doing with Tron in a while.
Mhm.
But it's still like now that I've been getting back into it, I'm like, this deck is powerful. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, and to Frank's point, Karn's gameplay was I included this one specifically for the alliteration, but it was just unfun, uninteresting, and unnecessary. Like being able to sideboard for all these cards in Modern, maybe that's like the kind of power level we have, but in Pioneer, just getting access to Cityscape Leveler, Haywire Might, all your hate cards, whatever, Might and Weakstone, etc. It just
God Pharaoh statue, the two,
it all just adds up.
The 2 combo pieces.
Yeah, Special and Cauldron and Chainveil, just way too many cards.
Well, and a Seeker's Chariot for like if you're playing into like Rakdos and Rakdos cannot deal with like multiple dudes because all of their stuff is spot removal,
Right.
and you're like, cool, if my Seeker's Chariot swings once, I'm gonna outgrind you.
Yeah.
Even if you've been attacking my hand and like killing
Karn
my
getting
planeswalkers
Cityscape out
and
of exile, like nah, dude.
Oh,
like Karn getting
man.
Cityscape out of exile.
yeah,
that's
because then
so much.
because then Unearth isn't a downside.
Right, exactly. Just too much. And honestly, after these bans, I think Pioneer's probably like in the best shape it's ever been. This format looks so good now. High power, but still really consistent. Just not over the top and no fetch lands. So like your decks have to be reasonably built. You can't just do like 5-color crazy stuff like we're doing in Modern. So
Yeah, and I'm really excited for, right, I think that what interests me about Fury being banned and mono green getting like an axe, like mono green will still put power on the board, but if you're doing things like what the old humans deck used to do, where you've got humans that like have ETB effects that remove your devotion, the deck is like nerfable, like
yeah.
playing into. But I think that because mono green with Karn being gone is just going to go down generally, that turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 decks are coming again, where it's like creature.
Yeah.
All right,
Especially with Copter. We'll definitely see a lot more tempo.
What are you doing? Because even today I saw like a Boros aggro list that was playing like just Inti and Thalia and Adeline, and I was like,
I'm excited to see more Boros or Martyr vehicles make it, and maybe some Heart of Quran action.
yeah, and even like Gruul aggro, I'm excited for 5-color humans to be real. I think it actually might be with like mono green being gone, because you don't feel like, oh man, there's an old growth troll and they're gonna play something else, and now I can't play anymore. Because
Also, I feel like Spirits gets worse with green being worse in the format, which is kind of nice because Spirits is so annoying to play. I hate Geistlight Snake.
Yes, Geistlight Snare is the worst. I forget the other counter spell that's like pay
Lofty Denial?
4. Yeah.
Other than that, it's fine to me only because it's 2 mana. Geistlight Snare ends up being 1 mana for them, I believe.
1 mana if you have an enchantment, which you have the Curious Obsession.
Exactly.
So like if you have both, then it's 1 mana.
Miserable. With that being said, I think Pioneer looks really good. I think we can agree that Karn being gone is like not a big deal. Geological Appraiser, kind of crazy. Oh, I should say though, on MTG Chicago, we did mention the Geological Appraiser combo and how the deck flips over. And I forgot the name of the finisher, and I couldn't name it on the show, so I commented it in the video. But for those that care, the way they were finishing was a Doomscar Titan, which was a 6-drop that they would Eldritch Evolution for, and ETB gives your team +1 in haste, kind of like a
Imadane's Recruiter?
Not Imadane's Recruiter necessarily, but there's one that they played in Dredge, but it's been so long now. It has like Unearth, and it's like the same thing, +1 in haste your whole team or whatever.
Yeah.
I miss Spirits from Below. But anyways, Mono green could deviate. We'll see if it ever gets fixed in the future. I think they can just finally like commit to changing their game plan. You know, they don't have to play the card package, so now they can commit to anything else that's actually green. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's more or less what I'm excited for.
I'm also excited to see what the Pro Tour, not Pro Tour, but the RC. There's an RC this week, this next weekend for Pioneer in Atlanta. And I want to see what decks are coming because, right, I do have a lot of sympathy for players that like bought into decks, like that weren't playing Pioneer, that bought full decks that are like, oh, I bought mono green and now I'm kind of screwed. I feel bad for that because, right, they will have to like go buy more cards, but it opens an opportunity for us to just really shake things up a week before our tournament. And I think that really like lets the, I don't know what the phrase is, but like lets the foam like rise to the top. Like the good players in Magic are going to come through, and people that can really cook are also going to come through in this event.
You're going to see some cook.
And I'm excited for that.
It is hard when they ban cards. And if you're a solo player rocking by yourself, it's miserable. But that's kind of the point of what we do with like community building. If you're not networking at this point in Magic the Gathering and you want to play competitively, I think it's a mistake. I think you need to have friends to play test with. I think you need to have friends to be able to borrow cards from. Like if I go to a tournament right now, I can hit up Frank, Todd, a ton of the people in the Discord, patrons, whomever nearby. Hey, I need this deck. What do you guys have? Oh, I have stuff at the shop. I can like finish up the deck list. Oh, I need to cook up a new list. What do you guys think? Play testing, finishing the deck, borrowing the deck, sleeving it up. I'll buy them new sleeves, no problem. Instantly. You know what I mean? And I see it all the time on Twitter, friends of mine that are like, oh man, thank you so much to X, Y, and Z people that helped me out with this deck list, especially for like Modern and Legacy where it gets really expensive. If you're not networking, you're going to struggle. The people that are going to the RC, most of them probably do have a friend group to be like, hey, I got banned off of mono green. What do you think I should do? And they're like X, Y, and Z, you know, oh, I got Phoenix. I got spirits for you. I got whatever. What do you want to play? You want to play green anyway and maybe change up the list, you know? So it does suck when cards are banned, but it's just necessary for the health of the game. And if you want to stay in it, besides just throwing money at the wall, you should really be networking. And we can help you guys with that. Obviously, meeting people that are nearby you in the Discord. For those that aren't local to us, you can meet other local players. And you can even do that online or go to your local LGS, etc.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know we do our shout outs at the end, but I will also shout out Sal because that's kind of how I got into Modern. Like I had Pioneer. I didn't really have the money to like originally start getting a ton of cards. I could build one deck and it was like Bant Soul Herder. And it was during the time of Fury. And so it'd be like, your whole deck is gone. And so I got tired of like getting Fury wiped during the Yorion era.
Aether Channeler was not it.
Yeah, not it. And on top of it, like he would just be like, hey man, this deck isn't working for me. Can I borrow some of your cards? Okay, here's Murktide. Here's Yawgmoth. Here's Living End. Here's Tron. Yeah. And right now, like even the Tron list that I've brought to the last few RCQs, I'm still borrowing his One Rings and his Urza Sagas that I'm giving back this week so that he can play a deck for one of his subscribers on YouTube. And then I was like, oh, well, I don't have all the pieces now. And I was like, well, Stan, Todd. And they're like, oh yeah, like we can just let you borrow those pieces.
Yeah, for sure.
As I'm building my collection and getting those One Rings.
Right.
It's really important and it makes playing Magic a lot easier.
Yeah, and it's definitely important to understand that this is a hobby at the end of the day. You really shouldn't overextend yourself to acquire cards. I always tell my friends, like, borrow the copy until you can afford to get the one. It's not going to be that bad. Just borrow a card. Whatever. If you need it really bad for a tournament, all right, $50 is $50 for a One Ring. It is what it is. But, you know, if that $50 is your tank of gas, you know, kind of got to be a little bit more realistic. With that being said, though, I think Smuggler's Copter is probably where we go next because what decks can use it and why. The first one I would talk about is our boy Julian. Shout outs to you. I know you're watching. He got top 4 at the NRG Pioneer last weekend. And he played Greasefang specifically and did really well. He beat Geological Appraiser in the Swiss. He actually beat Spirits in the Swiss. It was pretty cool. Unwinnable matchups, by the way. And he actually beat one of our buddies, Robert Taylor, in top 8. And that guy, if you guys don't know, he's on Twitter. He's always posting all like the tournament reports, all the data. all the upcoming events. Definitely shout that guy out on Twitter. Give him a thank you. He does so much for the community for free.
And that's so funny you say that, because he posted something today and it was actually a reply to like Men Gucci being like, oh, I'm so surprised that Beans got banned. And Robert Taylor like retweeted and said, the reason Beans got banned is when they decided to start cascading into Beans instead of things like Rhinos or Living End. And I was like, that is such a big brain take. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, when Beans is good enough to be like, we need to cascade into this.
Yeah, when you're cascading for fair instead of busted. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's like
I mean,
wait,
I did say the
four
same thing.
rhinos or these beans? Beans?
I don't remember
Exit.
which episode it was, but I think 2 episodes ago we were talking about modern for Sal specifically, and I was like, if you're cascading into not beans, you're wrong, and it was 100% true. Like it just was way better than everything else. Shout out to Spike for just always coming up with these clutch modern lists. With that being said, I really think Greasefang actually pluses with Smuggler's Copter. It doesn't seem like it'd be a card that they would want, because Rafine's Informant on 2 kind of sets them up for the turn 3 Greasing a little bit better. But what Smuggler's Copter does for them that I think is personally better is that it gives them more of a mid-range plan, which is a better plan B than what they already have going. Copter plus Chariot plus Sky Sovereign plus Greasefang beats, etc. without the Parhelion can still just kind of get there, especially with Copter in the air. The evasiveness really adds up. That 3 damage over time will just really add up, like kind of like a Dragon Rage Channeler, if you will. And now it kind of more or less commits them to Citrus Supplier, which I think is a really good crew for Smuggler's Copter, and a card that was already kind of just good for that deck anyway. They were kind of cutting it in some lists. I think we're going to start seeing people just go Citrus Supplier not optional, Smuggler's Copter not optional. Let's go from there.
Yeah, and I just think, right, decks like Greasefang that don't naturally have a lot of card draw.
Yeah.
Like having the ability to be like, oh man, I'm getting flooded.
Yeah, Greasefang floods constantly.
Yeah. So just having that ability, like that was one of the things that really like moved Rakdos up, was when Fable the Mirror Breaker came into the format.
Yeah.
And I view Smuggler's Copter like not as strong as Fable the Mirror Breaker, but in a close realm. And that's why I think like, oh,
Fable's a big winner, right? By the way, for like the new format. Fable's going to be everywhere. And honestly, card is just like peak fair card. So I think it's reasonable.
Yeah. And so I'm agreeing with what you're saying, because I think that it's also just going to make the deck hum a little bit better. It's going to play more consistent. The games that feel bad are going to feel less bad.
Yeah.
It'll be good. I also see this like Smuggler's Copter coming in, making its way into Rakdos Sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
I was actually DMing with one of my favorite content creators today, because I messaged him about like Pioneer a while ago. He didn't end up taking me up on like me like looking over his shoulder and helping him with like sideboard decisions.
Sure.
But I felt so like good that bans happened and he DMs me out of the blue to go, oh man, Karn got banned. Feels so good to be a Rakdos Sacrifice player right now. And he's playing in the RC this next week. And I said, I think that Smuggler's Copter is actually going to be really good, because like Fable, you can smooth your draws. But I think that in specifically Rakdos Sacrifice, the deck is like capping out at 3 drops. And I feel like Fable competes a little bit with Mayhem Devil.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even though, right, you are sacrificing the tokens, the things that you're creating, like with Fable the Mirror Breaker, I don't think you're ever cutting that card entirely. Yeah. But I was like, you might want to go down on them to put in more Smuggler's Copters, because it can help you like play into Spirits because you've got a blocker. It can help you play into Phoenix, because Phoenix like has so many flyers in it now. Yeah. And like it can trade into a unbuffed Letter Shredder. And then on top of it, like, you can discard your cats, and that kind of makes your cats better. You can discard Croxus. Croxus is getting better with Smuggler's Copter. 100%. And then Tenacious Underdog is also getting better with Smuggler's Copter. I am so excited for like some of the decks that are just like, I don't feel like it's going to break them and make them like so good, but I think it will make them hum a little more. Yeah,
Smuggler's Copter might be a reason why you'd play Sacrifice over the traditional mid-range Rakdos list. I'd actually be interested to see them start playing a little bit of Ardu, even like what Rakdos Sacrifice is already doing, and like what you were talking about with cards like maybe Thraben Inspector, where you're like getting like that free clue stuff that you can stack fodder, but still being able to crew the guy more efficiently. Keeping in mind that you really want to have these efficient crew pilots, if you will, for the Smuggler's Copter. Variant Inspector in Standard was such a combo with that. It was like, oh, these cards are like meant to be together. And cards that make treasures or bloods or whatever we've already seen are super good in Pioneer. So that might be like a better option than like a Blood Tithe Harvester for them in the future. Should they start to pivot a little bit? I'd even love to see some Heart of Quran action where you're like really committing to having the flyer. So now you have the 3/3 flyer and the 4/4 flyer. So your planeswalkers are better now. So if you're playing any form of Liliana, whatever planeswalker you decide to play, maybe they could even play Angrath if they want to go out of the sideboard over the top of these other decks. That would pilot the Heart of Quran with the loyalty so much better. Especially Liliana. Like Liliana the Last Hope might see an uptick if Spirits gets better, or just because people are playing more of these like 1 toughness creatures in general. Liliana the Veil, if you're playing that, also accrues Heart of Quran, makes her a lot less of a bad card if you're accruing this without using creatures. So I think in general the deck could go a lot of different ways. I would love to see some Martyr Vehicles again, or like sacrifice, kind of like pick up some of these Martyr Vehicles technologies and just like trying them out in their own archetype.
Well, and on top of Mardu vehicles, like in a similar realm, like Gruul Boats.
Yes.
Gruul
100%.
Boats is like, welcome, Smuggler's Copter.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be awesome, actually. Llanowar Elves piloting Smuggler's Copter. It's going to be so nice because, man, the Llanowar Elves, when you get to like the mid game, turn 4, you're like, man, my Llanowar Elf sucks. And it's like, oh, I'll use it for Lair of the Hydra. Like, okay, well, 1, you have to have the Lair of the Hydra, and 2, it's still not that good to just like pump the Lair of the Hydra when you really want to have better action. And drawing, discarding in those aggro tempo decks is nice. Like just getting rid of those extra lands through, or storing up your draws into sideboard stuff that you really need for the matchups, etc.
Yeah.
Making sure you hit those rending volleys or whatever.
Yeah, and that deck like didn't have a way of smoothing its draws at all. It was just like an aggro plan with like Reckless Stormseeker, and if you drew bad, it was just like, sorry, you didn't mulligan well enough.
Right. And it might be interesting to see if they play that 3-drop from Caverns of Ixalan that like Vigilance, make maps when he ETBs and attacks, stuff like that. I'd love to see that kind of card get played too.
Yeah.
Now that we're going to see more of like these tempo decks, like 1, 2, and 3, and this is what I'm doing.
I know it's a meme, and I think that they're one of the things that like Brian had mentioned to me was maybe mono blacklist now that green is gone, coming back, not necessarily on like a Nykthos plan,
Like a mid-range deck.
Yeah, but like a mid-range deck,
mid-range.
but putting Smuggler's Copter in it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I'm just praying. I am praying. I so badly want Bloodletter of Aclazotz and Gary to be in a deck where I am like shooting you for $1 million.
Well, there's also that one guy. He was getting played in Scam, but I think I also saw him get played in. There was a deck list that somebody was playing that card, and I so cook. But the guy that you like specifically, the 1-drop that if you descended on end step, it gets a 1 counter.
Oh yeah,
you can pay 3 to sacrifice it to do minus. And that kind of card is perfect with Smuggler's Copter. It's like, hey, if I'm not descending, I'm crewing. But if I'm descending, you're dying,
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be really good for mono black.
Well, that might even be better than Knight of the Ebon Legion, which is like the card that Pioneer has been playing for a while as the 1-drop that you can pump. That's cooking.
I forgot the name of the card, but that card, if Ty can put it on the screen, that would be really cool. And I think those cards would get along really well, specifically because later when it's a big creature you want to attack with it, you can just find something else, or the top deck, oh, now it's a 1/1, I didn't get to send it, it's still going to crew the Smuggler's Copter, and then getting rid of the guys that are blocking your Smuggler's Copter as well, because I don't know if it's a tap ability to do the sacrifice, but if it isn't and you can crew and sack it to get rid of a blocker, that would be kind of sick.
It's not a tap ability. I'm
really?
fairly positive.
Okay, because if that's the case, that's kind of nasty. Like crewing and then still using it would be kind of nice.
The specific meme I'm mentioning, just so y'all are aware, is Bloodletter of Aclazotz, 1 and 3 black. Flying, if an opponent will lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. And I don't need to explain Gary to you. How much devotion you have, you gain life, they lose life. So you're just practically doubling Gary's ability when it hits. It's like a finisher.
Yeah.
It is like an instant finisher. If you like go Gifted Aetherborn, Liliana, stack your dude, Bloodletter, next turn, Gary, dead.
Specifically with that card too, Julian, our boy who we mentioned earlier, he was brewing up a mono black deck and he had it in his list as well. And I was like, hey, does that work with Sign in Blood? Like if you have 2 of those guys and you're like, man, I really got to finish this guy off. Sign in Blood, target you lose 8. You know what I mean? Because it's like double.
Holy moly. That's so true. And they used to do that when Mono Black was being played anyway.
Right.
And his list didn't have Invoke Despair. I'm like, no, you need Invoke Despair with this guy.
Invoke Despair, yes. Yeah, so Mono Black might actually be really poggers in both formats. Like Cabal Coffers is making a comeback in Modern for sure. But in Pioneer, yeah, I definitely could see Mono Black being a thing. But we've already been seeing these brews show up already because Cavern of Islam just had so many cool cards. I think that we're for sure going to see Pioneer just like crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if we see brews all over the place. There needs to be an aspiring spike for Pioneer because like Spike is cooking in Modern all day, but like somebody's got to like start chefing it up in Pioneer and posting like these 5-0 deck lists every day because there's just so many brews you can do. And when we're in the Discord talking about these decks, I'm like, man, I got to try this out. So if you have deck ideas, shoot them to us in Discord. We'll try them out on stream and we'll see if we can get some 5-0s for you guys or whatever, tweak up the lists, hit up our friends for advice, etc.
Yeah,
I think it would be really fun.
The card we were talking about earlier, you were mentioning, can't remember it, Stalactite Stalker.
That's the one.
Stalactite 1 Stalker. Mana, and it's Menace, beginning your end step, descend, put a counter on it. It is not a tap ability. It is 2 in a black, and you just -X.
Yeah, and it has Menace. That card is nuts. Like I slept on that card a little bit. I know you mentioned it when we first saw the card and you were like, this card's awesome. I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Now I'm like, every time I see it in a list, I'm like, yeah, that card's awesome.
Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, right, exactly. With that being said, I think we pretty much more or less covered most of what we were happy with about Pioneer. I think the only other thing I would talk about is that Phoenix was already kind of one of the front runner decks before there was bans, and Phoenix still looks like to be one of the best decks in the format with this new Grixis version playing Bitter Triumph. Bitter Triumph is just so good. It's like exactly what the deck was looking for. The fact that it's like lose 3 or discard, so you can discard bad cards, fill your graveyard, discard an Arclight Phoenix, discard a Thoughtseize that you don't need anymore because you top decked it late.
Well, and it feels really gross with all of the delve spells.
Yes.
Because sometimes you're like, I'm just going to discard the extra card just so I can fuel this treasure cruise.
Right, exactly. The card is just nuts. It allows them to play mainboard Thoughtseizes, which if you know me, you know I love Thoughtseize, turn 1 Thoughtseizes, like
I played against a Greasefang opponent today that was like killing my creature while also discarding their Parhelion, and I was like, I'm in danger.
Yes, exactly. Bitter Triumph is the truth, but Phoenix has been just coming up with his new list, just like really putting up numbers, even through the Geological Appraiser because they had so much removal, and even through they were kind of the ones putting down Karn along with the Geological Appraiser deck. So that deck, in addition to like the fact that there's like it's like Copter's not really, I don't think, a problem for them. I think Fatal Push is already a really good answer to the card.
I found like the true MVP of that deck is Picklock Prankster.
Oh, yeah.
That card is ridiculous because you're milling 4 on their end step and then grabbing a card. So against like control, like they don't want to counter it because you're going to slam a better card or do your full combo the following turn.
It's so funny.
And I'm going to grab a Thoughtseize, I'm going to grab a counter spell, and then on top of it, you're fueling for the treasure cruise. Like, I'm so glad that card was printed because Pieces of the Puzzle just felt like a terrible Magic card that you were playing in Phoenix, but it like got the job done.
Yeah, Pieces of the Puzzle is definitely way more of like a combo card, like Gift Storm. Like, I'd rather play in Gift Storm than Phoenix. But yeah, it's funny because when the card first got spoiled, I was like, I could see this card getting played in like this kind of archetype for this reason specifically. But it was kind of like a throwaway thing. And then I think later on I saw Doomwake had like tweeted or posted something similar where he's like, yeah, I can see people using this as like a draw spell, but it's more or less just like a better strategic planning because it's instant speed. And now we're like, oh wow, this card that's like kind of bad is like really good.
Well, and I found matchups where even the fact that it's a 1/3 with Vigilance like really matters because, I'm playing against blue-white control. Well, your Wandering Emperor is never touching this homie.
Yeah.
Because he's always coming in with like vigilant attacks. Yeah. So there's a lot of like the card does so many small things that you're like,
there's a lot of small things together incrementally. And in the shell specifically, with the fact that the cards go to the graveyard and not on bottom of deck, it all just adds up.
Yeah.
But like we said, Phoenix, besides the decks we talked about that could be playing Copter, that's where we're pretty much at with Pioneer. We'll definitely cover it more as the format starts cooking. But for now, we want to jump into some Modern, make sure we get this episode wrapped up for you guys. Really quick, obvious winners and losers. I mean, obviously, any deck that was playing Fury lost. So, Scam, Murktide, 4-color Trade Binder, whatever, L. Decks that kind of won: Rhinos, definitely Yawgmoth, Amulet Titan, Tron, Hammer Time, like anything playing creatures. So Hammer Time and Yawgmoth for sure. Living End, Creativity. I think Cabal Coffers is a big winner. So Modern obviously has like a lot of decks. Besides Scam taking up 20%, all the other decks were like 10 to 5% decks. So we're going to see a lot more of these guys just picking up that meta share.
Speaking of which, I just thought that you'd like this. Do you know the guy Tron is bad on Twitter?
Maybe.
Ryan Nichols?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so he put up a post today that I was like, I should have sent it to you because it was so good.
Okay.
But what he said was, oh, Yawgmoth is the best deck in the format. No problem. And it was a picture of Ugin the Spirit Dragon, which like you and I have been on for so long in Tron that I was like, I laughed so hard when I saw that tweet.
Not to mention like Curse Totem.
I was like, oh, so right.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wasn't really scared of. I know we talked about how we were scared of Yawgmoth before if they don't ban Bowmasters, but I'm like, well, I play Tron. What am I scared about? Like Yawgmoth's a free win. Like,
right.
Like, yeah, for sure. So obviously those are like big winners and losers. Will Yawgmoth be terrifying now? Is Frank going to be playing Yawgmoth again?
Am I stepping into my Yawg era? I was really thinking about it because I was like, man, I've got those pretty Yawgmoths, like the ones from Dominaria Remastered. The only good thing that came out of there were those borderless ones. But I was like, oh, I got the Soul Cauldrons and I've got to get a place at a Bowmasters. Maybe we'll just stick with the Tron.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're borrowing that week.
Right.
But yeah, for sure. Yawgmoth's going to be a good deck. It's going to be consistent. I think the good Yawgmoth players are going to shine. The deck is pretty hard to pilot. If you are a bad player, do not pick up this deck. Yawgmoth that's an effort deck. Every time I watch a good player on the deck, I'm like, man, that guy is... Like you can see the steam come out of their ears and everything. Like,
yeah, it's definitely one that like as I was playing it, it was breaking my brain, and I think that it got a lot easier with like Agatha's Soul Cauldron just having the ability to turn everything into a Yawgmoth or like turn everything into a Walking Ballista. But it's still not like easy to do.
Right. I do like this deck specifically because decks that are playing Agatha's Soul Cauldron currently like just like X Hardened Scales and Yawgmoth effectively. Tishana's Tidebinder, the fact that that's in the format and we're going to be seeing it in the format, just get used to it. $20 plus card already. That card and Agatha's Soul Cauldron kind of like fight each other where like Tishana's is like, oh, I'm so good at like turning off your thing. And then Agatha's Soul Cauldron is like, actually give it back to him. He can have the ability again. So it's a layer thing, kind of like Blood Moon and Spreading Seas. Whichever one happens last is what kind of overwrites. So Tishana's can remove the abilities on a card, but it can regain abilities. And so we're going to see a lot of those kind of fights. And it's going to be even more important than that you are on your fundamentals, really abusing instant speed and responding to your opponent and being reactive. Because if you miss sequence and allow them to punish you for it because of these kind of cards now, you're really going to get punished. And Modern's already not nice to misplays. And so we'll see.
I've learned this from doing it on Standard, so I want to tell all the viewers out there because I know someone is going to make this mistake. Tishana's Tidebinder. 3/2, 2 and a blue, creature, flash. When Tishana's Tidebinder enters the battlefield, counter up to one target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. You can go ahead and counter something that's on an enchantment. The enchantment does not get stopped. So if it's like a saga, it will still tick up. If it is Wedding Announcement, it still will tick up.
Yep.
It's only artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers that lose all ability. So like keep that in mind.
That's true,
because I tried just like stop a Wedding Announcement permanently. Did not happen.
Yeah. But specifically, now that you mentioned sagas, keep in mind Tishana's Tidebinder and Urza's Saga specifically, they will have battles because you can't stop them from keep gaining like the next chapter, but you can stop that ability from going off. So if you want them to be hosed on mana and you stop the chapter 1 trigger to get the ability to make colorless mana, Urza's Saga will never gain that ability and it will just be a land saga can't tap for mana if you decide to threat is the constructs, then you can just target that ability, and now Urza Saga will never gain the ability to tap to make constructs. And keep in mind, if you cut them off the mana, it can still tap for constructs if it gains that ability later on. And if you're scared of whatever they're going to search for, like against Hammer Times, then you just hit that trigger. So it's still a stifle at the end of the day. It's really powerful, 3-power flash stifle. It is not nimble obstructionist. I hate that comparison. It's so brain dead. It's like a black mold in the brain take, because it doesn't do the same thing. It's a creature on the board. The flash 3-power is so much more impact than just, oh, I drew a card. It was a land. You know what I mean? Like, this is so much better, especially for decks like Rhinos. Like, you're going to see Rhinos. As a Tron player, I'm kind of scared. I'm going to be like, oh, Stone, and then they're going to punish me on my O Stone with the Tishanas, and they're going to have 8-power of Rhinos and then the 3-power from the Tishanas and just one-shot me with a Violent Outburst. It's going to be crazy.
Why are you going to out me like that? You're just bringing back my PTSD from this week when I outplayed myself trying to play around Tishana's Tidebinder.
Yeah, that's fair. Frank had a play. I think it's worth mentioning. He Sorcery Speeded an O Stone because he was playing out around Tishanas, but because he played around Tishanas, he lost to Violent Outburst. It's like, well, these decks are playing 3 to 4 Tishanas. Most of them are playing 3 right now, but I could see them playing up to 4. If your opponent has played more Violent Outbursts than Tishanas, you might be playing around Tishanas. But if they're kind of like on equal numbers, then you can only pick one to play around, and sometimes they have it. It is,
and I picked the wrong one.
Yeah, and Todd crushed them as a result, which was kind of funny. But anyways, that's kind of where we're at with Yawgmoth and Tishanas, unless you have something else to add.
No, I'm good on that.
With that being said, tribal decks, will we see goblins, merfolks, perhaps even humans?
Humans? Well, and this was something that I had like put onto the document like later was, right, Fury kind of wrecks, like we talked about, like the hierarchs, the ignoble hierarchs, and like decks that have like smaller creatures, and even just Fury being a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 was really, really rough. But Merfolk was already like becoming, it was a B tier deck before they banned Fury.
Right.
And then they printed Tishana's Tidebinder. And now Fury's gone. So it's like, I don't know. I think Merfolk might really have legs.
Yeah, Merfolk definitely, especially because it gets really good blue free spells. I think 4 Subtlety, 4 Force Negation is already like a good place to be at if you want to build them on a blue deck. And you just build Merfolk around that. It's not bad to just start off with. Humans, I think, because they're only fighting Bowmasters and they never really were a deck that drew a lot of cards. I think because they have Unsettled Mariners and I always forget its name, but there's the one from Pioneer that gives them all +1/+0 in Ward 1. The 2-drop human.
Oh, yes.
I always forget the name of the card, but that card, in addition to Unsettled Mariner or whatever they want to try instead, like Meddling Mage, etc., being able to like protect themselves. And now they have Jurina as well from March Aftermath, where she can sacrifice herself to Heroic Intervention, which is make all your guys indestructible, give them hexproof, stop Solitude, etc., stops Bowmasters. And her ETB is hit graveyards. So like I think humans might be a sleeper deck for something that could start coming up. And they might even sideboard some weird quirky stuff, we'll see. Because like 5-color Legends was already kind of a thing in Pioneer. Maybe we'll see something along those lines in Modern where they're playing Plaza of Heroes now.
Coppercoat Vanguard.
Man, I
kept thinking that. Vanguard.
Yeah,
what Vanguard?
I always think like Vanguard of the something, and I'm like, that's not it. There's just too many Magic cards, guys. I'm sorry, man. Like cut me some slack.
Owns a Magic shop. I don't know any of the cards.
I don't know them cards, guys. I just
know what the text is.
I hit
the pretty
Google.
Pictures.
I do know most of them by photo, honestly. But anyways, yeah. So I think humans can make a comeback. Goblins, it is a combo deck, so we'll see. Maybe they can do a thing. But definitely Fury not existing allows all these decks to like actually make a comeback. Anything playing creatures was just struggling. And as a Tron player, we're just happy to see Fury be gone because now they can't turn one, get a 4/4 double striker against us. And I think now if you play Scam in whatever the shell looks like, which we'll get into, as a Tron player, I'm like, I'm not really scared of that. You have to have like a really, really aggro double grief Orcish Bowmasters into Blood Moon to crush me. And that's not going to happen frequently enough for me to be afraid of it.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Scam, the stock list, because it more or less became a stock list where like you're not really deviating too many cards. those 60 cards minus 4 Furies, will we see people continue to do that? I think yes and no. I do think the shell itself is still strong. I think Double Grief Scam is still very powerful. Orcish Bowmaster is still very powerful. Blood Moon, I think, is a really strong card. And they have really good removal in the deck between like Fatal Push, etc. They could even play Bitter Triumph. They have Cruxa. The deck itself, I think, is still solid. I don't think there's a reason to add white or anything like that. I think you could still play the deck without Fury. It's just, will that be good enough is the question.
Yeah, I think that into some of the aggro decks, like the decks that have lots of creatures, I think like the Double Grief turn 1 just isn't as good.
Yeah.
But I think like what may help old Scam Shell is actually taking out Beans, because for like the 4-color decks, they'd be like, I'm going to rebuild quickly that I don't really care what you take.
That's
because
true. You can actually
I'm going to
scam them
rebuild
again.
like crazy. And Scam will still prey on those decks.
And they have to have the One Ring now, and the One Ring kind of clashes with Bowmasters, which I really like.
Yeah, and I also think that decks that will specifically, like if aggro comes back in like a fierce way, there will need to be decks that play like old school blue-white control, where they're like flashing in Supreme Verdicts.
Yeah.
That the Grief plan will really crush those.
Right.
So I think that there will, like, is Rakdos going to die? Probably not.
Yeah.
I think that it will adapt just fine without the Furies.
Probably not a 20% deck anymore, but
yeah.
It could be like a 5 to 10%er.
Man, it's gonna have to be in the percentage of like the rest of the decks.
It's gonna be like one of us. Crazy. What's it called? I promised to talk about Hammer Time because our patron Christian asked, and Hammer Time honestly seems good. Like no Fury, Bowmaster's still scary. Specifically, the interaction with Bowmaster and Esper Sentinel, because Esper Sentinel is like their only clear way to get card advantage, especially because they cannot like 1-for-1 your guys. They're always kind of like playing into, like they're playing a non-creature spell into the Esper Sentinel to get rid of threats. And Bowmaster's like, well, if I'm the problem, not only do I not trigger your Esper Sentinel, if you draw cards as a result of Esper Sentinel, I'm going to get even more triggers. And so like that kind of can still be kind of scary, but you can navigate around that where you can't really navigate around Fury, boop, 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 boop. And now you just lost. So,
boop, boop.
Yeah, I got 100%, literally. Be whoop. But Fury not being around, hammers are going to be back. Will they become as dominant as they were before? I mean, at one point it was the best deck in the format, up to like what, like a year and a half ago, I want to say. So I don't know. We'll see. It is obviously everything we're saying here is to be determined. We'll see what people cook up, but I think it is promising to say the least. What else? Oh, actually, the last thing we can talk about, will we ever see some unbans this format that we call modern?
Absolutely. I think that this is the beginning, right? We saw unban preordain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like with what is going to cook now, with like they don't want to do too much at once.
Right.
They want to see like how did our changes affect the format.
Yeah.
And
it was a lot, honestly. It was a lot. They did a lot of changes.
Yeah. I think this is probably one of the bigger shakeups I've seen since I've been back into playing Magic regularly.
Right.
And that's been, since Midnight Hunt, which is almost 2.5 years now.
I did mention a list of cards I think could come off the ban list as of right now in terms of their power level. If you want to see that, check the link in the description for the video we did on MTG Chicago for our last week preemptive ban expectations. And of the cards on that list, I think the one that would come the soonest currently is Ponder, mainly because if you look at the meta, besides Murktide, there are effectively no blue decks. Maybe Merfolk will make a comeback, but unless Murktide starts getting represented and Merfolk as well, I think without the presence of blue decks in the top 15, top 20 decks, not counting Omnath and Charlotte's Agent and cards like that, they just need some help. And I think the only way to help them reasonably is Ponder. I think it is the weakest banned card currently compared to like what else you could unban. But if you want to see the cards I was talking about there, definitely check out the link and you can see the full list of cards we brought up and why we think they could reasonably be unbanned. And if you agree or disagree with us, let us know in the comments. Join the Discord if you want to argue with us. We'd love to have you there and just discuss it. see what your guys' thoughts are. I always love to see what other people's opinions are on the format because you might be playing in a different metagame than us, so we can always learn something new.
Yeah, and one thing I would just say for those that are like, oh, well, Murktide is doing so well right now. Let's not confuse. I don't like to bring in like the stock market, but very similarly, that like when we get shakeups in formats, it's why when we got new cards and when people stopped playing Pioneer for a while, Raptors midrange did really great because everyone was trying to cook, and a deck that is playing 4 push 4 Thoughtseize is just gonna like do really, really well against all these decks that are trying to cook.
Yeah.
The same thing is gonna be true for Murktide. With the new shakeup to Modern, like people that are playing Murktide, which like has a pretty consistent, pretty like fair, decent game plan against most decks because it's playing Counterspell and Ragvan and, you know, is playing a lot of draw. Like that deck is probably gonna be doing well in the next 2 weeks. But that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh man, Murktide is back.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I hope it's like at least like top 4, just so we can get some blue representation. But yeah, Murktide is just a good deck. And in general, I think Ponder wouldn't add too much power to it. I mean, we already saw what kind of Preordained did for the deck. I don't think there's too much more you can help them with. And Ponder doesn't really combo with fetch lands like Brainstorm would, which I doubt they'll ever give us Brainstorm in Modern, but if they ever want to cook in Modern Horizons 3, you know, I guess never say never. We'll see. With that being said, I think that's our episode. We can do some shout outs and wrap it up.
Yes. So first shout out, Nancy Steroids. Nancy Steroids does all of our intro and outro music. I just got a sweet video on Spotify to like thank me for being one of the top listeners this year, mainly because of our stream and us being allowed to use his music there. Go and check.
Really good music. Yeah. I really enjoy it.
Go and check him out. He is putting out more and more every day, and just I can't believe that. So if you don't know, he's one of my coworkers at my job, and so like and he's got kids, so he like goes to work, goes home to his kids, and then like stays up late in the night to like cook his beats. Yeah. So he's
the guy on TikTok that's like, oops. He's the guy on TikTok that's like, my roommate at 3 a.m.
And that's absolutely him. And if you check out his Instagram, it's that too.
It's so cool though. Like honestly, it's really dope. If you like lofi and beats and stuff, just good music. It's really solid.
Did you say lofi? Was that on purpose?
I don't know. I don't know how to speak.
It's lo-fi. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Listen, MTG Chicago. Thank you.
Chicago.
MTG Chicago. Thank you. We were on your YouTube channel and it was really fun. I think we might have potentially more partnerships with Sal in the future, so be on the lookout for that.
Really great content. If you want to see live, again, we didn't necessarily say what content he's doing, but it is live Magic play. And he did say of all the local stores, but you'll see Pioneer, you'll see Standard soon because I've been playing again. Legacy, he's a big proponent of Legacy, and he actually just messaged us saying he's going to be picking up on Legacy in the coming days. So
yeah, Sal loves Legacy. So if you want to make him happy, just talk about Legacy. He will be happy.
Yeah. Shout out to Boar's Hat Gaming for allowing us to record in the store, and is obviously going to be helping us out with that giveaway that's coming soon. Mm-hmm. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
And shout out to Todd for helping us out with the tech and being in the background and also waiting with us for 2 hours while we talk about Magic with you guys.
Thank you, Jamie.
And
Todd Father.
Shout outs to our patrons. Thank you so much for keeping the lights on and supporting us. And also the rest of the viewers that are just hanging out with us. Shout out to you guys as well.
That's our episode. The next thing we're probably going to talk about is a little bit of Ravnica Remastered and kind of our diving into Standard as we're kind of prepping for the tournament. If you are in our community, not in our community, and you really want to talk about some Standard play, please come give us a listen, because we're going to be pushing hard to make a good run and represent in 2 months now. So thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And come check us out next time on Tales from the Tap.
Have a good one.